part-time for CWC and local foods. The other part-time, and maybe under 100 hours in a week, I do Melissa Hoff and a lot of chickens. Primarily, I'm a chick hatchery. So here in Wyoming, some of you all may be aware, we have a slow mail system, and a lot of baby chicks, if they're shipped in from out of state, they die in the mail. And that happened to me, and I thought it was ridiculous. So I was like, well, I'm gonna start hatching. It was kind of a crazy idea, but so far, it's not too crazy. I haven't bankrupted myself yet. So I have 4 heritage breeds, and they're primarily breeding stock to hatch chicks, but I also sell table eggs when I'm not hatch season, and I keep the roosters. We were talking about meat birds. I keep those rooster chicks and I raise them up for meat. And so those, they're not broiler hybrids, they're a different type of chicken, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. And this is my logo that I call the Buckaroo Chick. I think she's kind of cute. A local artist made her for me.
Is that because you always wear a scarf? The last 2 days I saw you wear a scarf.
I do. I love wild eggs. And where'd she go? Oh, there she is. When I had the artist develop her, I sent her pictures of my baby chicks, and I sent her pictures of confident-looking cowgirls from the 1800s. And it was like, oh, what could you come up with? And artists, they're amazing. They came up with this little Buckaroo Chick. And I also do a lot of horse stuff. I have horses, a large equine background, so horse people are seen as crazy, and sometimes chicken people are too, so I guess I'm a mash of both. So one of the things I feel makes a really successful business is you solve a problem first for your customers. You fill a need, and for mine, it's baby chicks. Customers, they die in the mail, they get stressed while they're being shipped here, even if they do survive, and so that was the founding of Melissa Hoff Hatchery. But there's other reasons to have poultry, right? First time, if you say you have chickens, most people think about eggs right away. And then you might talk about meat birds, and most people, when you say meat birds, you're talking broiler hybrids. But there are some other ways you could perhaps solve your customers' problems. That's why I put a question mark there. There's the baby chicks, there's selling live poultry. Anything else you guys think could come off? Their insect control. Anybody go to the goat browsing session? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could maybe, I don't know, rent them out for someone's garden insect control. Yeah, they could have some other ways you could use them to solve your problem or somebody else's problem. So the reason I first got chicks here in Wyoming, I grew up with them, and then living in town in Lander, I never got chickens. I don't know why you can't have them in Lander, not roosters, but you can't have them. And I lived in town for years, and then when I moved out to my current place, we instantly had a grasshopper plague. And I was like, oh, I need chickens. Solve my problem, right? And then they died in the mail. And I was like, well, now I have another problem. So there's different things that can happen there.
Yeah, they have those houses that I've seen, the mobile coops basically, that they can do that, and then they take them around.
Yeah, they move around. And I have a mobile coop pasture-based model, which we're going a little soon. Another thing as you're looking about whether you want to sell eggs or sell meat birds is what are your markets? And that's segmented a lot by demographics. What type of folks use a packaged whole chicken. What I found in selling it, less of us are as educated as our grandparents or great-grandparents are on how to take a packaged whole chicken and make it into food. We've got pretty used to the convenience of a chicken breast in a styrofoam flat with plastic over it. So a lot of what I do with my customers is knowing that, okay, age, probably not the younger folks are gonna buy a packaged whole chicken, or I'm doing a lot of education to talk to folks how you can crock pot a whole chicken really easy and just shred the meat off the carcass. And then that's an easy way to use that protein. So thinking about age, occupation, are they super busy? Are they a home cooker? Things, how they're gonna use that chicken. So demographics is pretty important thinking about it. Geography, region, where's, are you next to a population base? Is it more small towns? How many people are around you? Climate's important. So here in Wyoming, we're all talking about the winter still because it's still here. You can't raise broiler, well, okay, I shouldn't say can't. You could raise broiler hybrids year-round. They'd have to be indoors in the winter, and they have less rate of gain, and then your profit's going to go down. I have overwintered my rooster meat birds. I try not to do it ever again. I didn't do it this winter, thankfully, but I did do it last winter. I butchered in January. I just had a few, like 20 or so that I had to overwinter. And I changed some of my scheduling to not have that happen again. So thinking about climate's important, about how you arrange your poultry. Thinking about egg production for climate is important, and what breeds you pick and what type of coop you create for them. And then Also kind of like what feed you have for the climate as well. So that goes into management practices as well as how you're going to market your product. Then you have the psychographic, and that's more the lifestyle, the hobbies, the worldview, the values, and that goes, are they never, like some folks you talk to, you're never going to convince them to buy a packaged whole chicken. They're like, no. I actually have a friend, who's a dear friend, who's like, I just eat thighs. I'm like, would you like, no, I eat thighs. I'm like, okay, chicken thighs. I'm not going to cut up the chicken for you. You can go to the Safeway and get your chicken thighs. She's an older gal, she should know better. She's retired, she's plenty of time. But no, she's not changing her worldview on that or her value on that. Now, one thing that would, you were talking about you going into meat birds, if you have the labor force and the facility to cut down a whole chicken, you will sell it instantly.
So,
cutting down would be for the breast and the legs and the thighs.
And I want to do that for us. I don't know if I want to do that for other people or not, but how does that play into the Wyoming Food Act? You were talking about whole foods versus...
Chickens are exempt underneath that because it's on-farm processing. I've chosen not to do it because I don't want to pay those college students to do it, and I don't have a good place to do it, but you can do it in a home kitchen and still sell it under the Food Freedom Act.
Interesting.
Yes. So that goes into, you could get into someone who's a super busy lifestyle person, and you could be selling just those chicken thighs if you wanted. And a lot of folks do that for the value added of the chicken, and I've chosen not to just because I don't want to bother with it. Yeah, but if you've got the labor force, and then you have the market to sell it into, where people are going to pay for that convenience, pay the higher price because you're going to have more labor into it. You know, that's where it's good to think about these markets as you're getting into planning your business of where you'll sell it. There's also the behavioral part of it. So kind of talk motivated by convenience. Chicken thighs, that's all they want. They're going to pay for it too, and they'll pay it because they don't want to bother anything else. You have the folks who are health conscious. The reason they choose locally raised chicken. I have a pasture-based operation, which we'll be talking about a little bit more, which often comes into play with folks. It's a value proposition for their chicken meat. It's a town booster. Like my food dollar matters. I'm just going to buy local. I don't care how that chicken was raised. It's local. You have the environmentalist that wants to think about how the chicken fits into the ecosystem. People are thrifty, who maybe they see buying a whole chicken is way cheaper than buying a chicken thigh, so they're going to go the whole chicken route. It's kind of like buying in bulk for beef or lamb. So knowing your markets is going to know how you want to cut that chicken down, or if you want to leave it whole. Same with eggs. So for instance, you could package eggs in a half dozen egg carton, or for the folks who are just a 2-person household, or you could package it in 18 dozen carton for the larger families. So that gets down to your market segments as well. Then once you figure out what your markets are, then you want to think about your sales channel, how you're going to move the product to that particular market. So there's always the on-farm, and that's where a lot of folks start, especially with eggs. You stop by and you get eggs from your neighbor. The farmers markets are an excellent place as well. A lot of farms are starting doing an egg subscription because eggs are something people use a lot, right? Most people use at least a dozen a week, and unless they really don't eat eggs. But some people, there's a family in Casper, and they have a larger family, like 8 dozen a week.
8 dozen, yeah.
And they want to do an egg share. And I actually turned them down because I didn't have, I'm going into hatch season, so I didn't have the production, but hopefully somebody else was able, I think we were able to connect with people who had the eggs for them. So egg subscription is going to be a great way for you to know you have it pre-sold. Basically, you have a regular customer, they pay by the month, they pay by the quarter, they can pay by the year. You do want to factor in the fact your rate of lay will be lower in the winter if you're doing it by the year. You can sell it through social media, you can sell it through an e-commerce website. You could also do local food hub, and this would be like eatwyoming.com, sell through their retail site. You could do local food retail market. We talked about that in the Food Freedom. So under Wyoming food law, you can, with the correct labeling, you can sell ungraded eggs at a grocery store. Now Safeway and Walmart might be hard, won't accept your pitch, but like Mr. D's at Food Center, which is Food Center at Land or Will, they're independently owned, family owned, and they sell Melissa Hoff eggs. Now, you do have to have the labels all right to be under Wyoming food law, which is also USDA regulation. So that's an option too, which would be way more efficient than the farmer's market if you just dropped them off on Thursday. And you can also do wholesale the same way. And I forgot to mention, yes, if you have any questions, just flag your hand. Thanks for doing that. So while you're doing that, you want to think about value propositions. And this would also be thinking about food labels. You've probably seen it on eggs a lot, right? Cage-free, happy chickens, happy hen, or something like that. And it also tells people about what you care about in your management principles. So two that we really want to clarify on for our customers is if you're USDA certified organic or if you just have organic principles. Those are, you could hold yourself to USDA certified and never actually be inspected, but you cannot claim it until you get that inspector. And getting USDA certified in Wyoming is extremely difficult because we don't have an inspector here. They have to travel in from like Montana or Colorado. I've chosen not to go that route with mine. I do practice all natural and organic, but I generally just use all natural as my descriptor and as a value proposition because I know how difficult it would be to reach an organic level with what's available here in Wyoming. Enriched environment, that's a lingo that a lot of animal welfare people use. That's for, they may be inside all the time in the barn, but have you ever seen the chicken coops with like the swing and they get stuff to peck on? That would be an enriched environment. You have something to play with. Chickens are curious. They like to get into stuff. Outdoor access, of course, would be if they had an outdoor run, which most people do allow their chickens to have an outdoor run. Then you have pasture raised, and pasture raised is defined as you're rotating them frequently to new pasture with a mobile coop, which is the majority of my Melissa Hoff flocks are like that. And then I have one free range, and free range is the classic, they can go anywhere they want. Most of the time they're pooping on my stoop and laying eggs in the doghouse. It's kind of fun interacting with that way because it's a little bit more of a management thing, and you also have to protect them from predators and getting into trouble with that free range. And then cage free is generally used more when they're in a confined barn, but they're not caged. And this is used by a lot of commercial, million hen barn operations. They'll use that. They're like, well, they're not in a cage. Well, they never had the outdoor access and they might not have an enriched environment. But these are the labels that show up on the big guys' eggs, right? So that's what customers are used to seeing in a grocery store, and it's helpful for them for us to use them as well so they understand what we offer to them for our values as well. So one of the things, those value propositions match exactly to your management practices. And I have a short little video here provided by the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association. I'm a member of them, and of all the groups I'm a member of, I highly recommend them for education. They have some great resources. That spreadsheet I mentioned is from them.
Okay.
And it's free if you're a member. You can download it. And they have webinars, they have call-ins, they have an annual conference that's all about poultry on pasture. I really like it because not only does it have Joel Salatin, which is like, everyone knows him, he's a member of it, you can learn from him, but it also has all the small people, the homesteaders who just have their one little mobile coop. So, and everyone is just like, we just care about chickens on pasture. There's no stats there. And it's just a great learning. There's a great listserv out of there that people post questions to, and anyone responds to, no matter what size you are, what type of birds you're doing. And it's been an excellent resource for me. So they have this little video, and I've shared it with my customers. It really talks about how those labels work. Oops, now I have to use the right.
Go to the egg aisle in the grocery store and you're looking at those labels, you do see pasture raised, you see free range, you see unnatural, and you see all these things, all these claims.
I almost feel like we have to do a fair bit of de-education for a lot of our customers because so many of them are very misled by grocery store labels. They would assume that a free-range chicken would be the same product that what we're selling, and it's not. It's a gimmick that's marketing, and those guys use those tools to emulate what we're doing, but they're not.
Free range and cage free and grass fed and organic and all these sexy buzzword labels that cost a lot of extra money. those labels are almost all BS to the core. How do I know? How do I decipher? How do I discern what's really the truth? A suggestion is that you know the first name of your farm.
Just being organic isn't enough. Just being GMO free isn't enough. And to us at APA, we feel that there's even more to being pasture raised. That there's green grass outside, that the birds are outside, that the coops are moving, that they're mobile.
The first time you see a chicken on a pasture grazing, it's an amazing experience. As close as you can see a chicken smile as possible.
The sounds that they're making, like in a morning like this, really makes me happy, just because you can tell that they're engaged in they're just engaged in their world.
They truly love being outdoors. They love dusting themselves in the sun, sunbathing, eating and chasing bugs, eating grass.
We'll use cows to graze down tall grass. Then we'll use hens, especially laying hens, to go through scratch, cleanse those pastures of parasites that the cows are dropping into the manure, and move forward.
It's about incorporating a diversity of animals and plants where animals are a part of a landscape.
Chickens being exposed to an environment like that create a product that is, you can't believe how special it is. They do something that we can't do. They take bugs, which I don't want to eat, and grass, which I wouldn't do me good to eat, and mix that with grain, and they create a little package that is the egg.
The eggs they produce are nothing short of spectacular.
When you crack them open, you see this amazingly bright orange yolk. There's a richness and texture to it.
The whites of the eggs stand up. And then when they eat it, they understand that the taste is different, that they feel better, and all of that comes from daily move-on through grass out on pasture.
Oh, awesome. They're so fresh, like we're catching them as they're coming out of the chicken. Yeah, pretty much. That's what we want. They're really rich. They're really made for pasture.
I once called them butt nuggets to someone, and they really were like,
We need to step back.
like, but they are butt nuggets.
Still warm.
How is my food personally affecting all of the components of my life? How is it affecting the environment? How is it affecting my nutrition of myself and my family? How is it affecting my relationship with the farmer? Is there some way we could get back to a whole picture here and leave these components together and not fragment them out into little pieces here and there? It's going to take people who want to know and are willing to spend time to know and willing to find people they trust.
So one thing I like about that video is it has, come on, there you go. Quite a few coop models, right? They're all movable, but they're like big, small, little. I have smaller than that because I don't have that many chickens. Those folks are running a lot of layers, and maybe a lot of them are red stars. They also do the same with broilers that way. I have some different coop models that are a little bit smaller that I have some photos of as well. So I have pasture poultry as one of my value propositions, which to me is a management one for happy chickens, but also a health one. The chickens stay healthier, that means their meat and eggs are healthier. Another value proposition for me is my business is heritage poultry. So I run 4 different breeds. We got the Buckeyes on the left, and Dominiques, Salmon Faverolles, and Blue Laced Red Wyandottes. So all of them are either endangered or watch listed for low population worldwide. They're also dual purpose heavy breeds that are both good for egg and meat production and good for our cold climate, which is also important, especially after this winter. I do not have heated coops. They are uninsulated. And these birds, their egg production went down this winter. -28 was the lowest it got at my house. I have 92 inches of snow right now. So, yeah.
Do you deep layer?
I'm sorry.
Do you do the
Deep litter method?
deep litter method?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't because of, I ran into a problem this winter. I have a picture coming up. I have treadle feeders. So treadle feeders are, can we hold that thought? We'll show a video of it. Yeah, I'll explain treadle feeders. I can't deep layer because the treadles won't operate. And I ran into that this winter because I couldn't clean out my coops because it was too frozen. Yeah, the things you run into in a cold winter. And I was trying to do more on top of it to keep it fresh bedding, and then my feeders weren't operating, so I had some problems there to keep feeding the chickens for that. So another thing I do for pasture poultry management, being a chick hatchery, is I move chicks onto pasture at 2 weeks old. They are hatched at my house. They are in the barn in 2 different stage of brooders inside the barn, and then this is a 2 to 4 weeks old grow out breeder. They are converted toppers on skids. I move them every other day. You can see in this video they were there, then they moved, and whenever you move them, you can see how happy they are. Like, woohoo, we're so happy. So in there I have heat lamps. It keeps the heat really close to the ground, and they do stay warm enough, because at this point they still need supplemental heat. But that's not only is it a management thing for how I want to manage my birds, I think it keeps them healthier. It's also a value proposition knowing that these chicks are on grass as soon as possible.
How do you power your heat lamp?
I have an extension cord. So I did bring photos of the whole setup. So I have 6 of these toppers. Now, good news, you can get them for free. No one wants a truck topper. And then I put them on skids for 2x. I should have put some video up on there. I got a lot on Facebook. I'll hand that around, and you all can take a look and see what's on there. But because so after I sex, I run them separately by gender. I have a pullet pen and a rooster pen. I have 2 of these running right next to each other with different sexes. And so I run out a single extension cord to run both heat lamps. And then I move them next to each other. And I'm a little worried about this spring. I just set eggs this last week, and that's fast. They got 5 weeks. I got 5 weeks. It might be a little delayed getting on grass this year because of this winter. They might just have to stay on the barn. I can't even see these toppers right now. They're underneath the snowdrift.
How do you move them?
They're light enough I can move them by hand, but I do have a Ranger, and that's how I move some of my bigger ones, Polaris Ranger. So on the front of them, which this would be the front, I have the skid sticking out long enough to have an eye bolt in it. And then I have a rope that I can flip over the hitch on my Polaris Ranger. These I generally move by hand. You only want to move them straight forward, because if you move them to the side, you might catch a chick's foot. But they do really well going straight forward very slowly, because what happens is new grass comes up and they all run to the new grass, and none are in the back, so you can just keep on inching it forward, and they're like, oh, new bugs, grasshoppers, and they just keep moving with you. You don't want to do, with using a machine, you're in danger of going a little too fast if you're not careful, so that's why I prefer to do it by hand. You want to have the smaller toppers for this. Not all toppers come the same. The bigger toppers, I struggle to move by myself, by hand. And those I do not use for this application. I use them for a different thing. These are some of my smaller toppers that I can use for that. You may see a little bit over here, I have some little perches. Again, that's that enriched environment, right? Yeah, they're on pasture. They still like to get up. They're not roosting at this point. They sleep underneath the heat lamp. But they still like to get up and play. So
There's one peeking out the window on the other side.
Yep, they do. All right, so I can open the windows to get do the ventilation, and yeah, they'll look through the screens and look at the dogs and the cat. And, yeah.
How long
Even
do you
if
keep them in here?
they're here 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
And
you
this
move them daily?
They're moved daily or every other day, depending on how many I have in it. This is kind of a crowded one,
Yeah.
and so this is probably moving daily to make sure they're not too long. They're going to kill the grass. Also, it's not healthy for them. So the next place they go is the kinder pen, and this is a 48 weeks old. So they go out pasture next to the bigger coops. They have a 50 by 50 square foot run. They still have a little shelter they get going at night, but there's no supplemental heat in there. And then they have I move it daily, that shelter, so it's always, because they sleep on it, they have fresh grass. And they move about every week, this whole pen, to a new one. So they're here from 4 to 8 weeks old, and I still keep them separated by gender.
So that's just another truck topper?
Yep, on skids, and you see I just moved it by hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they just go in at night, but you
Yeah, I sometimes have to shoot them in a little bit at night.
Sure.
If I want to put them a little earlier. But they do go into it naturally, because that's their safe spot. Chickens like safety, so they do go in there. 8 weeks old to finish, they go up to what I call the McNugget coops, the big chicken coops. So now they're in a 16 by foot stock trailer, and all that has in it is a bunch of perches right up here. They're perching at this stage. This happens to be the rooster. So by the time you get to 8 weeks old to finish, my pullets are sold. So I sell baby chicks at day olds, females. I sell starter pullets at 8 weeks old. So they come out of the kinder pens and the pullets are sold unless they're my replacement hens. If they're my roosters, they go on to mixed nuggets, and I raise them on pasture till they're butcher weight. So these are all roosters in here. You may have seen I just moved one of my breeder with that's my side by side with the hitch. Yeah.
How old is usually pasture?
With these heritage poultry, it's about 20 weeks. So it's going to be double what broilers have. So when you're thinking, when you're doing the math on profit, you have to take that feed conversion into play there. So my competitors are the people who raise broilers on pasture, same management practices, but they're finishing in 8 weeks.
Well, in our, at 8,000 feet, it's taken just as long
With the broilers?
with the broilers for us anyways.
Yeah, they actually recommend you don't raise them over 5,000 broiler hybrids. I'm at 5,400, so I'm just like right over it.
Yeah.
So these do fairly well. They, I sell them with the value proposition of heritage chicken. That's how I sell them. Pastured heritage chicken is actually what I use on my labeling. So people know right away that they're a different type of chicken, and they look different. I should have brought some, but Leanne's seen them. You know, broilers are often 5 to 6 pounds. They're huge. They're great for a Thanksgiving centerpiece, but they intimidate some people, and they don't fit in a crock pot. So one of the things folks like about my roosters, they're gonna finish more at my big ones are 4 pounds, and they average about 3 pounds. They fit in a crock pot really nice. People who don't have a lot of family members, like a 2-person household like them. So that's a lot of my education I do with my customers, and that's kind of my value propositions, how I talk about them. And I also mentioned they're the roosters of a chick hatchery, and this is part of a life cycle and a sustainable food system. So I have a different, it's not that broiler hybrids are bad, I think they have an excellent place, but they're just a different chicken than what I'm raising. You have another question?
Have you sexed them?
Some of the breeds I have are, Dominiques are sex linked, so they have different color variations when they're hatched. The Buckeyes I wing sex. The Wyandottes have a little different coloration. And the Faverolles are extremely difficult to sex, so I'm only selling them as a straight run. I cannot time the cow rotation quickly enough for when the chickens need it, just because life happens. We have a question.
I do a couple of them that
Yeah.
just came up real quick. How many birds do you put in each one of your sections?
So these are 2-horse straight loads. You might recognize them. There's a lot of these around free too.
Mm-hmm.
And I run 20 hens and 2 roosters. So I'm running breeding flocks, and I stock 1 rooster to 10 hens. Okay. So that's what I run in there. I didn't bring any photos of the interior, but they're mainly perches, and the feeders and waters are underneath the perches. The nesting boxes are up in the front. You can actually see one of my nesting boxes through the little hatch. That's how I access it, is from that little hatch. This is in the summer. It was a hot day. I have all windows open on. These metal trailers do get a little hot. The chickens go underneath for shade, and then I just keep all the doors open during summer, close them up at night. And I also have automatic doors on them as well. The 16-footers, which I had in that video, I have 2 of those that I'm running the meat birds in, and I stock at about 150. They have perch space for 150 in there. And I didn't bring the calculations, but if you Google recommended perch space, there is a set, like, I think it's 12 inches per bird you want on a row, and that's how I base that on.
How long is your premier one fence then?
These are 100-footers. I have all 100-footers. Yeah. And on that sheet, it talked about the spacing. You can get a different spacing with posts. And I like the closer spacing because of the wind. I get a ton of wind. And they do flex with the wind, and I want a little stiffer, more posts in them, which is a little higher cost.
Do you run your cattle and then your birds and, following suit with each one of them?
Yeah, I try to,
Like paddock farming?
yeah, so the cows, this particular area, they graze that twice in a season. So the chickens rotate, these coops rotate weekly, and they'll just move forward. I keep them on a line in the same direction. It really helps management. So I go out there and I boop, boop, and they all just move one forward, so they're here and then they're here. And this area, it's based on the photo, I think that was getting a little long. I need to get the cows up there. Sometimes it just doesn't work to get the cows up there sooner. I have them on a different part of the property that's a half mile away. I try to keep them up mainly for the fences to keep the grass down. but sometimes it just doesn't get there. I think that it would be hard to run chickens without some other type of livestock to eat the grass. Unless you wanted to mechanically mow it, like bush hog it. You'd want goats or sheep to rotate with them because chickens can't utilize the forage if it gets too tall and rank. And they actually can't even walk through it very well. You know, it's knee high if you're irrigated and they're like, we can't get through here. And so it's nice. And then you also have your fences, so it really needs another animal grazing with them, or you to mechanically mow it, which to me is like, well, that's another cost that doesn't make sense. I don't own the cattle, I lease the cattle, and I would keep the cattle there because they work well with my chickens. I actually don't make any money on leasing the cows. They're not a money maker for me, but the chickens are, and they're integral to how I manage my chickens. So yeah, there's no cash there, but they're helping my chickens out.
When you are going to look for metal trailers like that, well, I guess two questions. If you had goats and chickens at the same time, would you put them in there together or do the goats first and then move the chickens in?
I would do them separately.
Separately?
Yeah.
Okay. And then where would you start finding those trailers? Facebook?
Yeah, generally I'm like, I want your unroadworthy chip trailer. I picked up that brown one with 4 flat tires, and I dealt with the tires, and they gave it to me for free. I'm like, I'll take it. Had a hole in the roof. I patched it. This one I traded some packaged whole chicken for. I don't know, I shared with 5 chickens with a trailer. I think all the tires were aired on that one. Another of my bigger 16-footers didn't have any wheels on it at all. I showed up with the wheels. He helped me lift it with the skid loader. Perfect. I got it out of his way. It was free. And then another, that green one, was also free. It had 4 flat tires that I dealt with, but it was full of 3,000 pounds of trash, and that took some money to dump at the landfill. But I was like, okay, this is my fee for buying it. It has a good floor.
So when you rotate your fencing, what's that process where you don't lose birds? How are you rotating?
So what I do is I do it early in the morning. They all get shut in at night. I shut off their automatic doors. I don't let them out till I move them. So when it's hot out, I do it real quick. Immediately at sunrise. So I turn off their automatic doors. They're still in the coop. I always have the opening of the fence to the front of the trailer. Open it slightly, back in the side by side, move it forward, move the fence, and let the chickens out. It's pretty quick. It doesn't take too long.
How are you supplying water to those?
These particular coops, I haul it to a 3-gallon, and I have a picture of that. I'll just show you. I have a nipple waterer. The big meat bird pens, I run a couple 100 to 150 in. I have a gravity flow watering nipple system. I'm going to show you that comes up a water tank. But this poultry nutrition health, all this management is good for the birds, but it's also a value proposition I talk about. So I feed them food waste from a grocery store and restaurant. Not only does it decrease my food bill a little bit, it's a flock management tool. It keeps those curious chickens doing something. It's free except for the time it takes for me to go get it. And people, when I'm selling to them, they like to hear that. They're like, oh, that's part of your, I like that value that you have. I like it too. Also, I grind my own grain because I have enough chickens that it is too expensive to buy bagged feed. And I work with a local cattle rancher to do that, which he has fat cattle, and he's buying semi-loads of grain that he stores in his grain bins, and he grinds me a special ration. And it's all locally grown grains from Fremont County, which I also like. I'm big on local food. I like to support other local businesses and local farmers. It is not organic. It is not. It may very well not be synthetic chemically free. That's harder to find in Fremont County, so I've chosen personally just to go with, I want to support my local neighbors and my local farmers and buy their local grain. So that's, again, goes back to my labeling and what I tell customers, because I'm not going to claim organic, because most of it, if it were organic, that'd be fantastic, but there's just not that there. And you can make the argument, I'm not buying enough grain to sway anybody, but if you got to the level where you were buying enough grain, you could convince that farmer to go, oh, you want organic and you're going to buy this much? Well, I think I might switch. I'm not the level to have that leverage, but if you had enough folks in an area, like if that cattle rancher who's doing way more fat cattle and they eat way more than my chickens, if he came on board with that too, well then, okay, now we're semi-loads into it and we can maybe switch that paradigm here locally. But right now, I don't think there's anybody certified organic grain here.
How do you store your grain?
So previously I was doing totes, 1,000-pound totes. So I'd work with the rancher to fill the totes, which is Tyler McCann. And you may go to the meat thing. He was here this morning briefly. He's with Wyoming Cowboy Cuts. And then I would move the totes to my house and store them in the barn. And I'd bucket out of it. You kind of see my buckets right here. I've switched that now. I bought a gravity grain wagon. And I didn't do it. My brother and dad did it. They pulled it off the running gear and they put it on a flatbed gooseneck trailer so I can go highway speeds, run the 40 miles up to Pavilion, get my 4 tons of grain, run home and bucket out of the gravity grain wagon. I'm very excited. This will be the first season I have it. So I just am switching, getting a little efficiency there with that gravity grain box. And then I don't have the totes anymore. Oh, I forgot. So how I do my ration is, this is a great book if you're looking at grinding your own feed. Jeff Maddox is out of Pennsylvania, niche poultry feeding and management. He goes over turkeys, ducks, he has broilers in there, and he has all the nutrition facts, how much corn you need, or how much oats, what you need for oyster shell. It's a really great resource if you want to go beyond bagged feed and start doing your own. And if you have sheep or cattle and other things, he also has a ration that's multi-purpose species. That then you just do a few additives for different species. And he just helped me do a ration. He will do a custom ration for you. Where I have a base ration that then I do some different things for age classes of chickens. So I do I'm doing my mix of my own chick starter now with that base. And I'm also doing a meat bird ration. And then a breeding layer ration, which is different than a layer ration. So you can get really specific in there. You can start with getting his book, I recommend it. He also has a Facebook group.
Rations is cheaper than buying it back.
It is, for what I'm at. I did 7 tons of feed last year. And for here in Fremont County, even if I order a pallet of feed through one of the feed stores, they charge me the same amount as a bag off the shelf. So I'm not saving anything by quantity. And I can't even get the breeder ration I need here, it's just layer. So for breeding, you need a little different nutrition than layers do. And the other thing, so most of the time layer feed is 47 cents a pound. Does anybody know what you're paying for layer feed per pound?
I want to say it's like 13 or 14 bucks for a 50-pound bag.
That'd be pretty cheap, and that might be chicken scratch. That wouldn't be what you need.
I think it's layer feed. I have it in my phone.
Okay,
I can find
that'd be
it.
good price. So the closest thing I could get, which still isn't appropriate for breeders, is 47 cents a pound, and I can work with Tyler for 37 cents a pound. And it's also, just for how much feed I'm going through is a little bit better than bagged for me personally. It depends on your quantity. Like, what's the tipping point? Bag, you were by Torrington?
Yeah.
Torrington has a feed mill. Lucky you.
Yeah,
Lucky you.
Z&W, yes.
Yes, my closest feed mill is Torrington or Billings. That's why I'm grinding it locally. Torrington might be able to do you a ration just for you.
Awesome.
And totes. You can just take totes in and bring it home. That would be great. If you're up in the Bighorn Basin, definitely look into Billings. There's a Fertel rep. So Jeff Maddox is with Fertel, and Jonathan Claymore is just south of Billings, and I've been working with him to get what I need. And I'm actually shipping in a bunch of stuff from his warehouse for my feed ration. But he'd be a lot closer to if you're in the Bighorn Basin. Yeah, so if you're next to a feed mill, I envy you.
Have you done any experimentation with fermenting or where they sprout the feed?
I have not. In this winter I talked to Dirk and Sue Gosnell. Some of you were on the tour yesterday afternoon about them sprouting me some, what do they call it?
Fodder.
Yes, thank you, fodder in their greenhouses. And they didn't have space or the time, but I was like, Dirk, if anyone wants to experiment with this is Dirk. Like, Dirk is that type of guy. He didn't have the time. I don't have a greenhouse, and I don't have the time to do it. The reason I haven't moved to fermented, there's a lot of studies on how fermented really increase egg production. I haven't moved to it because of my feeders, which I still haven't gotten to, but I'm going to get to my treadle feeders. The reason I have treadle feeders is I had a pest bird problem. European starlings infested my coops a couple years ago, and they gave my chickens coccidiosis. So I was really shutting down feed access, and it's hard to do fermented feed in a treadle feeder because it doesn't flow down. So I'd be really hesitant to go to open feeders and get all the starlings back because they're still there. I just now managed them a little bit more. So depending on what other things you have in your environment might decide what you want to do for feed types of things.
Do you just go to the grocery store and be like, hey, can I buy your outdated products? I mean, like, how do you have that conversation?
And this is a nibble water. We're just running out of time, so we're kind of moving along. This is an insulated, Premier One makes this. I highly recommend it. So I had an agreement with Safeway in Lander for 2 years. I picked up from them for free from the produce department. And then their corporate policies changed and I couldn't do it anymore. Did that change for you too?
Run into a ton of that. And I'm like, well, you're just gonna throw it away anyways,
Yep,
and they
it
don't
just
care.
goes in the dumpster.
Yeah.
Safeway was great to work with. It wasn't their decision. Unfortunately, some other people forced their hand. So you may have seen some of those boxes, that was from last summer. I would take the boxes of whatever they put in it. I would sort it out and they were great to work with. They let me bring back the trash and put it back in the Safeway dumpster. There's quite a bit of packaging that comes off of that. And anything that chickens couldn't eat, like onions, I put in my own compost. You know, I'm like, I'm not gonna make them take it back. Some other folks, more and more folks are doing this in Lander. That's fantastic to use food waste. But they came into Safeway and they're asking Safeway to sort it for them. And the produce department was like, no, we're not gonna do this. And then they just decided to shut it all down. Produce manager requested the store manager and the grandfather be in, and then it just didn't. They wanted to be fair to everybody, so they said no to everyone, which was a bummer for my chickens. So now I'm working with some restaurants, and it comes in a little different form. Yes, BJ?
I just wanted to add to that really quick, because our local soup kitchen is really good to work with for
Mhm.
food scraps, and it allows them to get more grant money, because they can say that there's zero waste, and they let us use their dumpster for all the wrappers.
Yes, it's important. I've done that with the food bank. They occasionally in Lander have some extras as well, and they'll give me a call. Yeah, so there are some other options out there. Then Safeway's a big chain grocery store, so they're a little different to work with than local folks. And the restaurants I pick up is a locally owned restaurant. It's not McDonald's, so they probably have plenty of food waste too, but I don't know that they let me pick it up. So that was a nipple water you saw real quickly. That's in my breeder coops. They're 3 gallons. They're insulated. They can be plugged in. The cord can detach. They're hanging. They're enclosed. I switched to nipple waters because of those pest birds. So when the pest birds are in the coop, they might poop in the water and then they still get the chickens sick. So I wanted a cleaner water, and I also wanted it more insulated in the winter to decrease electricity costs. Now, -28, those waters couldn't keep up. They froze solid on me. So, you know, you gotta spoil me.
So what's your solution for water in the winter?
I still use those. Here, oh wait, because I want to explain this one. I still use them. I just did some water pans for short term. It was just when I was down in -28, like high -20s that they froze. And then they were fine in like negative teens, which we had quite a bit of. And that's unheated coops. If I had unheated coops, they might have been able to keep up at -28, but I don't. So those have been doing well, besides that really big cold snap. This is my water system for the meat birds. I just got this design last summer. Highly recommend it if you're gonna do a lot of meat birds. So I did almost 600 last year. It really takes away the labor. It's fantastic. It comes off a 300-gallon water tank. It's on my water wagon, so it moves around with the coops. Has a water line that's a gravity flow down to a set of nipples. That's at chicken height, of course. And here I just moved the chickens. I was getting the air out of the line. So when you unhook it and move, I got some air in the line and had just to kind of clean it out. You can see the chickens are like, yeah, fresh water. It keeps it cleaner, it keeps it fresher for them. I'm not hauling buckets for 400 chickens, which is a lot. A key thing for this type of system, you need a tank that does not get sun rays onto it. So a friend of mine donated me a clear tank, and I was like, well, why buy a black tank if I was just given free a clear tank? I covered it in a tarp. It worked fine. I made sure the tarp didn't blow off with a lot of twine, and it worked all summer. So you can use a clear tank, but you do need to make sure, because what happens when that sun hits the water, it creates algae. Algae getting into my lines is just going to clog it up. So that's a really key point when you're doing this type of system. I have this running 2 different pens. You may see another line coming off of it. So I park it where I can run my water lines into 2 different pens of meat birds. So there's probably about 400 birds drinking off of it at a time. And when it was in the 90s in July, they were drinking a lot of water. They're little, but they drink when they're hot. And so it would last about 3 days, that 300-gallon tank. And then I unhook the tank, tow it up to the house, fill it, tow it back. And that was fantastic. I'm in love with my gravity flow water system.
We're over there in Casper and we get a little more wind than you guys do over here.
Mm-hmm.
This year, we're gonna spray paint our coats, so we don't have to worry about the flapping.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I like the flapping in it. So this is a treadle feeder. These are 30-pound treadle feeders. You can see this Favril she's a salmon Favril. She just went and operated. It's just a short little thing. So they learn really quick. Food motivated, right? We all love food rewards. So they just step on the little treadle, the flap opens, they peck in there. Doesn't work for fermented feeds or wetter feeds, but it's really good for dry feeds. A starling's not heavy enough. It also gets the rats and mice out too, because they can't operate the treadle as well. If we're thinking about profitability, it really lessens your feed costs if you don't have something else besides the chickens eating it. And I was losing a lot of feed to those starlings. It also keeps the chickens are notorious for raking. They'll really rake feed. If they're having to balance on a treadle and eat at the same time, they're less likely to rake it out and waste feed that way as well. So one of the things I do this is Esther Hobart Morris right there. Yep, I took that video, I think Friday morning. I was finishing up the slide deck. I have roll-out nest boxes. This is really key for clean eggs and selling unwashed eggs, which is what I sell. This is a hen gear model, highly recommend them. You saw some of them in that pasture poultry video from APA. They're made 50, like ones that will do 50 hens. They're really big for those bigger coops. This particular one is for 30 hens. It's a community box, so there's no divisions. You may notice that. What it does eliminate is hens piling up in one compartment. You may have had that happen with your laying hens. Because they have they can have more room to go. They can kind of spread out. Some people say the Shire hens don't like the community boxes. My Faverolles are shy and they don't mind at all. So I think you'd be okay with any breed in these boxes. So they have, you saw that I took the eggs out of the back roll-out deck. I have heaters in there for the winter so my eggs don't freeze, so I don't lose eggs for selling. Keep a little bit. The other thing is this bedding. In here it's like a turf grass. You can take it out and wash it really easily. I've had trouble when I was using bedding before, nesting boxes blowing out. Sawdust would just go poof. Hay would just go poof, because I would open up all the doors in the summer to cool the coops. The wind would come up if you're in Casper, you know this, and then there went all my bedding.
What was the brand of that?
Hen gear, and it's on that sheet. 2 different models are on that sheet, but I really like the Hen gear ones.
Where do you put the heater on those boxes?
The radiant heater is just in the egg catchment section. So it's not underneath the hens, so they're not pooping on it.
Sure.
And they make them for these boxes. Then you plug them into a 35-degree thermal plug, so they only click on if it's below freezing, which saves you electricity and wearing of your heater. And they're just about this wide, and then they're the length of the nesting box.
Oh, but they come kind of with it, like you're.
Yeah, you can buy from the same company.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought mine from Hen Gear, and they're measured to fit their boxes, which is handy. You know, if you were at the Gosnells and Dirk never buys a kit, sometimes buying kits is nice. These come disassembled, they're shipped in disassembled, they have good instructions. They're better than IKEA to assemble, but you do have to ratchet them together, and they come with instructions.
Do you have trouble with the hens not laying there?
Sometimes with pullets, you have to do some training with pullets. That's why you saw that fake egg. Let me go back. So because it's I lost my mouse. There's a little fake egg. Because it's a roll box, and this comes with the kit. Kits are sometimes nice. It comes with a little keychain on it so you can latch it so it doesn't roll down into the catchment tray, it stays up there. I hook it right at the front so hens are like, oh, an egg, I should lay in there. So they see it right away when they come in. That you can buy fake eggs for any nesting box. I highly recommend them, especially for free-range chickens who are more likely to go around and hide their eggs. Having the fake eggs in the nesting box just reminds their simple little brains about where they should be laying their eggs. It also can eliminate egg eating, because if you have an egg eating hen, you could just give them a whole nest of wooden eggs to play with, and you take away all the real eggs. And then also they're like, well, this is no fun, it's wood. And I've had dogs. I had a puppy who was going into chicken coops and stealing eggs. Well, then she got a wooden egg accidentally, and I found that in the yard. I'm like, ha, got you too. You can't eat a wooden egg. So another key thing for profitability, they may be chickens, and yes, if you're raising cows, you need to know your production costs, but you do for chickens as well. lot of it's the same as any type of operation. If you're doing direct to consumer, you do have the added packaging, labels, advertising, website, travel, delivery, and what you're doing there. We're almost running out of time, but real quick, I'll pull up this spreadsheet. So this is the meat bird spreadsheet. So you can see this is set up if you bought chicks. I hatched my own, so I filled this out with some of my numbers. I just estimate it's $150 a chick. You might have to be paying more if you're not hatching them yourself. Which broiler hybrids you're not, you're gonna have to purchase them. Then you have the labor rate. I always shoot for paying myself $10 an hour. Is that a livable wage? It's not minimum wage. I like to think I'm doing okay. I would like to pay myself a livable wage. I'm not there yet, but I want to include some part of my labor in there. And even if it's less than a livable wage, at least something's in there for accounting for costs. So you'll see that here, okay, batch size, you got 500. Amortization, that's for your infrastructure that comes into play later, like how long will your infrastructure last to do like my water wagon and things like that. Then we're gonna go down here, use your brooder production costs, so your labor for for when the chicks are in the brooder. So brooder is supplemental heat. Your bedding. I do not pay for bedding because I work with a local cabinet shop and get free sawdust. So I don't have a cost in there. And that particular cabinet guy, he really likes me because he doesn't have to haul to the landfill. I come and pick it up. And it saves him some time and some costs because he would have to pay to dispose of it. So if you're looking for a lot of sawdust, because I use quite a bit for brooding and for my chicks, look around for your local cabinet shop guys, woodworking guys. They generally have, I get garbage cans of it. So that's why I don't have a cost per bedding. Heat, well, that would come from utility, and I know I'm low. I need to do better on my, I also live on my place. It's hard to parse what is costing what. We got the feeders, the waters, and you're gonna 5% mortality, perhaps. Then this is set up for pasture. So after I put this together, you have a question? Yeah. I have this set up for pasture because I got it from APA, and I do pasture. So after the brooder, chicks move to the field, and you lost 5%. Oh, you're 500. You're 500. You still have some labor. Here's your grower costs. Now when I put the sheet in, I go with highest cost. So if I couldn't get my feed from Tyler, who knows, I need to think about 47 cents per pound potentially. My field shelters, my field feeders, my waters, and then a little less mortality because they're older birds. You guys have probably brooded chicks. Sometimes they're kind of fragile. Now this spreadsheet takes it all up to the top, and then it tells you your selling price, what your target carcass pattern. So my average target carcass is 3 pounds in these heritage roosters. Some are heavier, some are a little bit shorter. According to what I have here, I need a price per pound. My break-even price per pound is 10.86. So that kind of really helps you think about all your costs here. And you're supposed to stop at 515 is 510. So there's another one for pullets. If you're selling started pullets, there's another one for egg production. That I didn't bring a sign-up sheet, but if you want to, take a little Melissa Hoff magnet, Buckaroo Chick magnet, and send me an email. I'll drop this spreadsheet to you if you'd like to have it. I can send it to you. You got a question? Yeah.
Yeah. What incubator do you recommend for hatching?
I have GQF's cabinet models, and they worked really well for me. They hold 250 eggs each, so they're a bigger. Yeah.
Follow-up question to that, what do you use for your brooders, hover brooders, or are you using lambs?
I use a combination. So my first week brooder is just a lamb. Let me bring a picture of that, and it's an old stock tank that has foam board around it and a foam lid to keep them really warm in there. Then my grow out, then I have Bromwell stacking brooders for my second week brooders, which come with a radiant heater, and they stack, and they're on like pretty tall. And then when I get into those truck toppers, my grow out brooders, I use a combination of a radiant heater and a heat lamp out there. Yes, it's a combination. If you're looking at incubators, you really want one that's an automatic turner. And here in Wyoming, you want one with a water reservoir because they're so dry. You don't want to run out of water. So my cabinet models have a 5-gallon bucket reservoir that it runs into a flow system to make sure they always have enough water. Moisture is extremely important for hatching.
Do you find that chickens here require more humidity than normally as specified in incubator manuals?
No,
Oh, so it's true to the incubator manual for chickens?
yes.
Okay.
And I think I just closed out of my entire presentation. Well, we're out of time anyhow. What else was on there? So we went through proposition. Another thing for profit margin, and I should have had this slide up there. I follow, one of the models that I'm following is called Profit First. It is a book. You can find it. And it has really helped me organize for making sure I'm thinking about profit. And also think about the fact that I have targets. So I'm not all, Profit First says you should have 5% profit for what I'm doing for my size of business. I'm not there yet. I'm third year business. I'm not there yet. But it's my target, and it gives a lot of good principles of how to reach it. Like, okay, if you're not there yet, how do you decrease other areas so that you get to the 5% profit?
Where do you find your selling market? Are you a CSA? Are you selling to?
For baby chicks, I sell through my website, melissahoff.com. And I also do any live poultry through there. This year, I'm now USDA NPIP certified. We're talking about even flu at some point right at the beginning. So USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service has a national poultry improvement plan. If you want to ship out of state, you need to have that certification. So I'm now shipping hatching eggs nationally. So if you're in the finance management, I know you were this morning. I was in there too, and I was talking about revenue streams. And my highest, most profitable revenue stream is hatching eggs off these heritage breeds that are rare and watch listed. And a lot of folks, people around the U.S. want to order those hatching eggs for them to hatch in their own incubators, whether they're doing it for backyards or other own business, they're breeders themselves. So now for that certification, I'm under the Wyoming Livestock Board and the state vet. I am tested quarterly for avian influenza and typhoid paloma, which is AI is an oral swab and paloma is a blood test. So there's a cost involved with that. So when you're looking at, NPIP is good to know if you have avian influenza in your flock, but there's also, you have to pay for it and get it. So I went that route to do it because I wanted to be able to begin shipping hatching eggs out of state. I'm also certified with that to ship live poultry, but I've chosen not to because chicks die in the mail.
Yeah, they do.
And I don't want to be shipping them out to customers and they die, it just seems ridiculous. So I've chosen not to do that for my business. Hatching eggs, though, are safe, they will travel well. Depending on how the Postal Service manages it. I got an email from a customer. I sent some eggs this week to Bremerton, Washington, and they got lost in the mail. They're no insured. She has to initiate it. And I was like, hey, you better call the Postal Service and initiate the insurance. At that point, it's actually not a liability on me. It's now the Postal Service's problem. So that does happen. And if you go to that bigger market, you're going to deal with more of those things. So hatching eggs I do nationally. They're sold through my website. I do run national marketing campaigns for that, and I'm on breeder lists, and I'm on different things for poultry, so folks can find me for that. Baby chicks and starter poults I sell just in the state of Wyoming, and I sell those through the website as well. For table eggs, so I'm not in hatching season. I sell table eggs from all these hens. I run about 100 hens right now. And I'll be adding another breed. I'm going to add partridge chanticleers this next year. And so I get quite a few eggs from that, and I sell them primarily in Jackson. So we talked about segmenting markets at the beginning. So I've looked at my value propositions, and I've also looked at my production costs, and went, okay, I have a lot of attributes that people in the Jackson Hole communities will really value. And I also have higher production costs than some other folks who are doing different operations because I'm pasture-based. And because I have heritage birds versus some really high quantity rate of lay hens that you can get, like the red stars, they lay way more than, the Buckeyes are my highest producing breed that I have. So I have higher costs. So I need to charge higher to have a profitable business. And I feel like I have these value propositions that I can use to show folks the value of that. And then recognizing that that might not be my local market, because that's higher, I've decided to do my bulk of my focus on Teton County. If you're in the food freedom, you heard me maybe talk about Teton County farmers markets. They're different than other county farmers markets because they get consumer health inspected. So when you move into different markets that may have different rules, you should know that beforehand. They're great to work with over there, but they're different than selling in Fremont County. It's also thinking about travel time. So I'm a 6-hour round trip to get to Jackson. And to hit an 8 a.m. market, oops, at 8 a.m., I leave at 4 a.m. in the morning. And it's a 10-hour day just to do the market. So thinking about that labor cost with how much I'm charging for my eggs. But I also bring my packaged whole chicken over there, which is the same thing. You may have seen that $1 per pound, that was my break-even price. Yeah, that's real right there. And I don't even have my electricity really good in there for my brooders. So I can sell at a higher price per pound for my pastured heritage chicken in Jackson and have a profit on them. But you may have heard me mention, I was talking with John this morning, they're my least profit. My rooster meat birds, they have a little bit of profit, but they're not as profitable as the other things that I do. They're more of a byproduct and a food source for the community. So how do you balance that with labor? So I'm still working all of that out, but all that goes into planning even before you get to the chicken. Like what chickens do you want to have? So for instance, broilers, they grow really fast and you can have a profit much easier in different markets. But Jackson isn't the only lucrative market in the state. We often think of Jackson Hole, but there's other lucrative markets. Cheyenne is one, Cody, Sheridan. There's other towns that have people with higher incomes that value those attributes that you may be able to offer. And yes, it may require you to do some travel, but there's also some ways to do it with online ordering. So I sell both through eatwami.com retail. I also sell through Slow Food in the Tetons. And they have an online marketplace. I don't have to go over there because I work with Eat Wami Food Hub to transport all my sales to that online marketplace. So there's more and more of those options that you yourself don't have to drive over there. You can use the collaborative infrastructure to move your product. So Eat Wami moves product that they don't sell through their website for a 20% commission. So when I set prices on that online marketplace at Teton Slow Food, I add 20% because I don't want that to come out of my product line. Yes, it raises the prices for that community. Not everyone in that community is well heeled, but most of them are. Jackson Hole is the richest town in the U.S. It's the richest county in the U.S. There's a lot of money over there. Cody is pretty similar, not far behind there, and there's other pockets of affluence around the state. But you do have to kind of think about as you're setting your market and what value propositions you have. So if I was just doing broilers, I probably wouldn't take the time to go to Jackson. I would sell them locally. I would have less feed costs because they finish so quickly. I wouldn't have all these breeding chickens because I have a chick hatchery, so it's just a different model. So it really comes down to what you want to do and how you want to use your chickens. If you just want to do eggs, you probably want to go like with those red stars we saw on the short clip with a higher production rate of breed and just swap out your pullets and sell them for stew chicken every few years and have, they'll lay 300 eggs per bird, which is fantastic. And that would be more income just for eggs. I'm not just looking at table eggs is the term for human consumption eggs. I'm not looking at just at table eggs because I also do hatching eggs. And then, it makes it a little more complex business. But as you're looking at poultry, that really comes down to your goals, what you want to have, and that determines what type of breed you want to choose. And then you kind of go out from there.